Hey everyone, and welcome back to Schneid's 15. So today we are going to be doing a starter clutch in a 1995 Suzuki King Quad 300. Should be the same for like the late 80s King Quads and Quad Runners all the way up to the early 2000s. Part numbers may vary for the later models or early models, whatever you want to call it, but everything else should be the same, close. So anyways, what's happening to diagnose this? If you have a starter that's been, if you hit it and it's kind of, and it won't turn over fully, or it grabs sometimes, or it's a really slow turnover and it's just not good. I had a couple like bearing noises, like a bearing was failing. If you've been, if you're subscribed to me, you'll see in my previous videos I was talking about a growling noise in my, when I got my new King Quad, because of this one, it had some funny noises to it. But anyways, so what was happening, I thought maybe it's a starter clutch because I had a slow turnover and I had this odd bearing noise, so it just was not very good at all. So what happens is you don't have a normal like Bendix gear like on a typical starter that shoots out. It's always engaged to a gear and there's a one-way bearing on that gear. And what happens is it's like a sprag clutch, some people refer to it as, or a one-way bearing. But what happens is it'll allow the shaft to turn one way, but the other way the claws kind of come down on the bearing per se, and it would grab the shaft and spin it and start your motor. So anyways, what's happening is you turn this on neutral and you hit it. It's just like a Bendix isn't flying out. So what's happening is that gear has wore down, or that bearing has wore down so much that it's not grabbing the shaft anymore. But what you got to do is pull off your cover. So start off with pulling. If you have factory, you'll have 3 Phillips head bolts in there with 6 mils on the bottom. Mine's not factory, so I got some 10mm bolts in there and stuff. So do those. You got 1 bolt here, 1 bolt here for your rack. You got 2 bolts right here, and repeat right there, those 3. Pull off your seat, undo these 2 and those 2, and this back half will just lift right off. Alright, so with that off now, come up to the front here. You're going to need an 8mm. So start off by taking your 8mm socket, undo these 6 bolts here. Your recoil will just pop off of there, and you can set that aside. Don't worry about it coming apart, it'll just come off. Next, take an 8mm right here, and right here, this bracket will come loose here. If you do have your exhaust shield on, mine was broken the last time I put my exhaust together, so it's not on. You pull that one off too, and then we're gonna just mark this where the position. We're gonna clean this and then mark it with some whiteout or something to make sure this goes back in the exact same position that it was in. Alright, so our recoil's off. Somebody's been in here before me, obviously, the last guy that said he did it. This looks brilliant, so we're gonna have to deal with that if it's cross-threaded or what. But anyways, worst comes to worst, I guess if it's cross-threaded and doesn't go back on, we just don't have pull start. Anyways, there's a line on this bolt here, and there's a line on here. They are not lined up at all, but so I imagine it was put together wrong, but I don't know. So but this line right here is for tightening the bolt that tightens onto your splines, and right here is there's just a line right here, a little alignment mark, so we're going to use this line right here and make a mark with it. But this is for your high-low, so I'm going to shift it into low so it's straight up and locked in there, and then we're going to disassemble, or actually we're going to go into high, because then you can get to this bolt here. And in the meantime, get a pan going and get your oil draining, and then you won't have so much of a mess when you do pull off your cover, obviously. So we're gonna get to just pulling off the shift cable here, and then we're gonna pull off the side cover. Alright guys, so everything's out of there now. Every bolt was able to come out with the frame, but there's one right here behind. So what we did, or what I did, was take the 2 9/16 out of here, 14 mil, loosen this, and you can pull this bushing out of here. Pulling that bushing, then you can move that enough to get that out of there. So that's perfect. So we'll just throw that 8mm out of there, and our case is free. Alright guys, so it's starting to get dark here. As you can see, I'm not in my garage, and it sucks. I'm up in my trailer, but what can you do? We got this out. The stator, that grinding noise, I found out what it was. Stator's all ground up here. It was charging and producing good spark, and it was running amazing, so I'm gonna leave it. It's not through. The outside layer is just a little bit off there, so I'll make sure it's clean. The flywheel looks alright. The magnets looked a little bit funny, but we got gears everywhere. Linkages that I gotta look in the manual how to hook up. That's for your starter. That's what engages the clutch, which is back here. As you can see, I can move the thing both ways, which it shouldn't be. It should be turning when I go ahead here. So anyways, this has to come off of here, and so I need a puller for this somehow, so I'm going to look up how to do that and see if I can bore one off of a buddy possibly. But yeah, anyways, that's her for tonight, and we'll be back in the morning. I forgot to say, make sure you disconnect your stator wiring when you undo this. But yeah, that's her. We'll be back with you guys when we pull this off and replace the starter clutch in behind. Also, if you need a gasket set, that's the number of a complete gasket kit that's made in the USA by Windorosa. I had the Windorosa and an Athena gasket kit, so I got 2 of these covers. Whatever one looks the nicest I'll use. And yeah, we'll see you in the morning. Alright, so it's the next morning now. We can pull this thing apart. I can see in here again. Take a 7/8 and you're gonna want a impact, and it's actually a left hand, like a normal right hand, righty tighty, lefty loosey one. And you can pull that nut off of there. Usually, well, the other side's backwards, this side's fine that way. Anyways, you need a puller. I got one here from actually our local Ideal Supply, or Napa could order it. It's a M for anybody that wants to do it. It was kind of unclear on what to get. Some say M35, some say M38. This one here is an M38 by 1.5, and it actually has a crankshaft protector in it, and so that's nice. That goes over the end, so you're not going to ruin your threads in back farther, so you don't ruin your threads, or so you're not just pushing on here to ruin it. So anyways, we'll thread this on here and pull off our flywheel, and that's where your starter clutch is, behind there. Alright, so I just used my impact with a 7/8 on it because your motor wants to turn over. If you use the impact, you can do it. These are left-hand threads. Alright, so the flywheel's off. This is the back part with a bearing on it. That's where your starter clutch is supposed to be. As you can see, mine just shredded upon removal, so that's why it's broken. The new assembly, I couldn't buy it without this gear. I had to buy it with the gear from Suzuki and the bearing all together. So now what you got to do is take these Allen heads out of here, and I'm actually going to bring it to my shop at work and borrow the tool cleaner and clean out all this crap out of here and pull this off, and then the new assembly, it all bolts back on here. Alright guys, so I got my case all back together prior to putting everything together. Still waiting for parts. I got to clean this gasket here and here yet, otherwise we're all cleaned out. ready to go. This is how all of your gears go in. I have to wait for one washer because I don't think it was put in here by the last guy that did this job. So there's a washer right here, but there isn't one here, and I'm waiting for that washer from Suzuki now. It sucks because it's one washer holding me up and it kind of pisses you off, but what can you do? So it's kind of an important washer to have in there. So yeah, it's all in there. Right there, there's a little, that's your detent for your shift. Your shifter goes in there. I got all my other shafts in here. It's all clean and ready to go. So if you're watching this video because you're doing a stator replacement, if you're doing that, you come up here, you remove these 3 8mm bolts right here. You bolt in your new stator, those 2 Phillips there, run your wiring through, and your new stator would be replaced. So while you're in here, check out your bearings. They're all nice and good in here, no reason to replace them. So we're just waiting on that washer, and we're waiting on the starter clutch so we can pop that back in there and get our flywheel back on. The flywheel magnets actually got damaged from that starter clutch, so we're gonna have to take some glue and glue the magnets, because you can't buy a flywheel for these anymore. It's a part that's no longer available from Suzuki. So I'm just going to glue them in just to make sure that none of those magnet pieces come loose again. So I'm going to do that tonight. I think I'm going to use JB Weld on them and glue them back in, epoxy them in, and we'll be set to put this thing back together. So when you see me next, we're going to be taking the starter clutch, bolting it to the flywheel, and reinstalling it. Alright guys, so I finally got the parts. You have to buy this gear with it. So here's the starter clutch that all comes as an assembly, not assembled. Anyways, take your bolts here, fasten your starter clutch to there, and then we can get to slapping it in there. Our starter clutch is on. And our flywheel here, I just got to tighten this nut up, get my washer for here, and then we're ready to put our case on. I just got to finish scraping this gasket here and here, and we're ready to slap that case on and fill her up with oil and try her out. I'm just going to put my washer on here. This is what Suzuki sent me. I figured it would be just a regular washer like these two here. It's the exact same thickness as these ones, but it's a little big, and it's bigger for the shaft. It'll actually slide over the next shaft that is splined. But when I look up my parts right here, where is it right here? This 09167320002 washer, that is the perfect number in the parts diagram. The perfect number in the parts diagram for a washer for the outside of here. So it fits a little loose, but it's the right thickness, and once you put your case on, that gets sandwiched into there against the bearing. So if it's a little bit off center, it goes on to right here. So even if it is a little bit off center, say right to here, it's not gonna affect anything, right? So I'm gonna put it on. I don't know if they have it on for lube purposes of a bearing, I thought maybe because of these holes, but it doesn't make sense because oil really can't get into there anyways. So it kind of puzzles me why, but I mean, I confirmed it with the dealer again, and it's the right number for there. It just doesn't seem like the right part. So I don't know if it's a mess up in the Suzuki book or what, but from what I can see, even if it's off to the side, it ain't gonna cause any issues because it's just acting as a spacer in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw that on. Alright, make sure you're tightened on here, and then once you're done that, you can go ahead and put your gasket on there, which I did, and I got it in a dowel up here. Make sure you got a dowel there and a dowel in that back right corner, and as long as your case is clean here, which mine is, you're good to go to put it on. One good idea is to get actual brake clean behind these bearings and let it come out down here because it's hollow back there for oiling. So just a good idea. Otherwise you're good to slap this back on as long as your mating surfaces are clean. Alright, so once you have this on, you can put your cog on here for your pull start. Obviously put your gasket on and you can put that on after. But in the meantime, make sure you put your bracket back here. There's one right here, so you can bolt on your exhaust. I don't have a bolt for this one, it's stripped. It never was on before. This, you make sure you line up your line here with the dot, and that's how Suzuki actually says to do it. And you're ready to go there. All we gotta do, I am gonna change the oil filter while I'm at it and fill it up with fresh oil, and then we're gonna start it up and see if that starter clutch works and we don't got any crunchy grindy sounds in there anymore. Alright, so we're all together. I changed the oil over here, filled it up with oil, so we're gonna see if it runs, see if that starter clutch kicks in and get some oil through it again. It's been sitting here for about 3 weeks, so we'll see if this engages. Sounds pretty normal. Alright, so finally take your recoil here, slip it up behind your shift cable there. You can get that up. Sometimes the snub's a bit of a pain in the ass there. There we go. Get it lined up there. You can give it a little pull if the cogs don't line up. And put in those 8mm bolts here. Just snug them up. I wouldn't worry about torquing them. And then just your plastics to put on, and I forgot to say, put these 2 bolts in here and your motor mount back in. Otherwise, when I went to shift this, I had a panic attack that my detent slipped off in there because it wouldn't shift, but it was just the shift mount, the whole thing was moving, so it wouldn't shift. Anyways, we'll put those on and then we're going to start it up and give it a little test run back and forth and finish off the video. Alright guys, that's how to change a stator or a starter clutch on a King Quad 300 and how to pull off that left side cover there. So if this video helped you, please subscribe to my channel for more King Quad how-to videos and for lots of other backyard mechanic fix-it stuff. I fix snowmobiles, ATVs, boats, I do it all. So if you enjoyed it, please give me a rate and a subscribe. I really appreciate it, guys. I love to hear your comments. Thanks. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and please give the channel a like and a subscribe. If my videos interest you, please click on my channel and check out my other videos.